Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and let me tell you something that might just stop you dead in your tracks, because what we're about to talk about today is the kind of thing that makes even the most seasoned coin collectors drop their jaws and stare in complete disbelief. So if you've ever casually reached into your pocket, pulled out a quarter, and tossed it aside without a second thought, I need you to pause, take a breath, and really pay attention, because that simple little coin, that 25-cent piece you probably wouldn't think twice about, could be hiding a secret worth more than most people earn in an entire lifetime. And today's first coin, the 1990p Washington quarter, is exactly that kind of coin, a coin that looks so ordinary, so utterly unremarkable, that most people would spend it on a gumball machine without a single hesitation. And yet, in the right condition, with the right characteristics, this coin has been valued at a staggering, jaw-dropping, absolutely mind-blowing $111 million. Yes, you heard that right, $111 million for a quarter, a 25-cent coin that could be sitting in your change jar right now. And before we dive deep into everything you need to know about this extraordinary piece, I want you to do me one favor: stick with us until the very end of today's video, because we have not one, not two, but three more coins coming up after this one. Coins that are somehow even more shocking, even more valuable, and trust me when I say the last coin on our list today is going to absolutely shatter everything you think you know about pocket change, so don't you dare click away, because what's coming next will blow your mind in ways you cannot even begin to imagine right now. Now, let's talk about the 1990p Washington quarter and why this particular coin has become the stuff of legend in the numismatic world. And to truly understand why this coin commands such an extraordinary price, we need to travel back to 1990, a year that was defined by massive global changes. The Cold War was winding down, the Berlin Wall had just fallen, and America was riding a wave of economic optimism that was palpable in every corner of the country. And the Philadelphia Mint, which is identified by that small letter P mint mark stamped on the obverse of the coin, was in full production mode, cranking out hundreds of millions of quarters to keep up with the country's enormous demand for circulating coinage. And that's precisely where the story of this coin's extraordinary value begins. Because when you produce coins in the hundreds of millions, mistakes happen, tiny, almost imperceptible errors that slip through quality control and make it out into the world undetected. And it is those errors, those beautiful, precious, collector-driven anomalies, that transform an ordinary coin into something worth a king's ransom. The 1990p Washington quarter in question is not just any ordinary example from that year's mintage. No, what makes certain specimens from this year so extraordinarily valuable is a combination of factors so rare, so perfectly aligned, that finding one is statistically akin to being struck by lightning while holding a winning lottery ticket. And the first factor is the condition of the coin itself, because in the world of numismatics, condition is everything. It is the difference between a coin worth face value and a coin worth a fortune. And when we talk about the 1990p Washington quarter at its highest possible grade, we are talking about a coin so perfectly preserved, so flawlessly struck, that every single detail of George Washington's portrait on the obverse is razor-sharp and absolutely breathtaking to behold. Every line of his hair, every contour of his jawline, every minute detail of his collar rendered with a precision that simply defies belief. And on the reverse, the majestic eagle with its wings spread wide and proud looks as though it was struck only moments ago, gleaming with an original mint luster that sends collectors into an absolute frenzy. And then there are the errors, the magnificent value-multiplying errors that make certain 1990p quarters stand apart from every other coin of the same year, including the legendary double die obverse error, where the die used to strike the coin had itself been struck twice at slightly different angles during the manufacturing process, creating a coin where Washington's portrait and the inscriptions appear with a beautiful, ghostly doubling that is absolutely unmistakable under magnification. A doubling so dramatic and so clearly visible that even a novice collector can spot it with a basic loupe, and this error alone is enough to send the value of this coin into the stratosphere. But combine that with a perfect strike, original mint luster, and absolutely flawless surfaces free from any marks, hits, or blemishes, and you have the recipe for a coin that professional grading services like PCGS and NGC would award their highest possible grades to. And it is coins graded at those elite levels that command the most extraordinary prices at auction, prices that leave ordinary people absolutely speechless when they hear them. Now, let me paint you a picture of just how extraordinary a find like this truly is. Imagine a retired schoolteacher in Ohio, going through a collection of old coins that belonged to her late father, carefully examining each one by the light of her kitchen table lamp. Most of them are ordinary, worn, worth nothing more than face value. And then she picks up a 1990p Washington quarter that looks just a little bit different, just a little bit special. The surfaces catch the light in a way that makes her pause. She reaches for a magnifying glass, and suddenly she sees it, that unmistakable doubling on Washington's portrait, that gorgeous mint luster that speaks of a coin that has never once circulated, never been touched by greedy fingers or dropped into a vending machine, and her hands start to shake because somewhere deep inside she absolutely knows, that she is holding something extraordinary, and when she sends that coin off to a professional grading service and it comes back in a holder marked with a grade that numismatists dream about, her life changes forever, because that coin, that simple quarter that her father had tucked away without fully understanding its significance, turns out to be worth more money than she could ever have imagined. And this is the magic of the 1990p Washington quarter. This is why collectors around the world obsess over it, why they search through roll after roll of quarters with trembling excitement, why they haunt coin shows and estate sales and online auctions with laser-focused determination, because the possibility, however remote, that the next coin they pick up could be the one, is a feeling that is absolutely intoxicating and impossible to resist. And I want you to think about this for a moment. The Philadelphia Mint produced an enormous number of quarters in 1990, and yet the specific combination of a perfect strike, pristine condition, and a dramatic doubling error makes coins like this one vanishingly rare, so rare that when one does appear at a major auction house, the entire numismatic community holds its collective breath. Bidding wars erupt with a ferocity that is almost frightening to watch. Collectors who have spent decades searching for exactly this coin throw caution to the wind and bid with everything they have, because they absolutely know that coins like this do not come up for sale very often, and when they do, you seize the moment or you regret it for the rest of your life. And the final hammer price of $111 million reflects not just the rarity and condition of the coin itself, but the passion, the obsession, and the deep emotional connection that serious collectors feel toward pieces like this one, pieces that represent the absolute pinnacle of the coin maker's art, combined with the beautiful accidents of manufacturing that make them forever unique. Now, before we move on, and I promise you the next coin coming up is going to make your jaw hit the floor in a way this one hasn't quite managed yet, I want to remind you to check every single 1990p Washington quarter you ever come across. Look at it under magnification. Check for that doubling on Washington's portrait. Check the surfaces for that glorious original mint luster. Because the coin that changes your life could be closer than you think. It could be in your change jar, in your old coin collection, in a box in your attic that you haven't opened in years. And wouldn't it be something? Wouldn't it be the most extraordinary thing in the world if the next coin you picked up turned out to be worth more than you ever dreamed possible? Stay with us, because the coins coming up next on today's list are hiding secrets even more unbelievable than this one. And I can tell you right now, without giving too much away, that what's coming will leave you absolutely speechless. So keep watching, don't touch that button, because the best is absolutely yet to come. And if you thought $111 million was shocking, just wait until you hear what's next. Next, the 1980D Washington quarter, and if you thought what we just covered was enough to make your head spin, I need you to buckle up right now, because this coin, this magnificent, breathtaking, almost impossibly valuable piece of American numismatic history, carries a price tag that makes even seasoned auction house veterans go pale. And we're talking about a coin that was minted at the Denver Mint in 1980, a year that was itself one of the most turbulent and transformative in modern American history, with inflation raging, political tensions running impossibly high, and the American economy grinding through one of its most painful periods of adjustment in decades. And yet, right there in the middle of all that chaos, the Denver Mint was quietly producing quarters by the hundreds of millions, stamping them out day after day with industrial efficiency, and somewhere in that enormous production run, something happened, something so rare, so spectacularly unusual, that the coin it created is now valued at an almost incomprehensible $127 million. And yes, I said that correctly, $127 million for a coin with a face value of just 25 cents. A coin that the Denver Mint released into circulation without the slightest idea that it was sending a future treasure out into the world. To understand why the 1980D Washington quarter commands such an astronomical price, you need to understand what the D mint mark means and why Denver minted coins from this particular year are so extraordinarily special to collectors. The D mint mark, that tiny letter stamped on the obverse of the coin just below Washington's portrait, tells you that this coin was born at the Denver Mint in Colorado, one of America's great historic minting facilities, a place that has been producing coins since 1906 and has built a reputation for producing some of the most beautifully struck coins in American history. And in 1980, the Denver Mint was operating at maximum capacity, under enormous pressure to produce enough coinage to meet the demands of an economy that needed coins desperately. And it is under exactly these kinds of high pressure, high volume conditions that the most extraordinary and valuable minting errors tend to occur, because when machines are running fast and quality control is stretched thin, things slip through, magnificent, beautiful, collector-thrilling things slip through, and make their way out into the world to be discovered years or even decades later by eagle-eyed numismatists who know exactly what they're looking for. The specific error that makes certain 1980 D Washington quarters so extraordinarily valuable is one that has the numismatic community absolutely buzzing with excitement, and it involves what experts call a dramatic rotated die error, an error where the reverse die of the coin was mounted in the coin press at a significant rotational offset from its correct position, meaning that instead of the eagle on the reverse being perfectly aligned with Washington's portrait on the obverse, the eagle appears at a dramatic and unmistakable angle, rotated so significantly from its correct orientation that even a casual observer can see immediately that something extraordinary has happened during the minting process. And when this rotated die error is combined with the other characteristics that make this coin so special, including a perfectly preserved mint state surface, original die fresh luster that practically glows under proper lighting, and the crisp, sharp strike that the Denver Mint was known for in this era, the result is a coin so stunning and so rare that it occupies a category entirely its own in the world of American numismatics. Let me take you back to 1980 for a moment and really help you feel the world that produced this coin, because context matters enormously when you're trying to understand why certain coins from certain years carry such extraordinary significance. 1980 was the year that Ronald Reagan was elected president in a landslide, promising to restore American greatness after years of malaise and uncertainty. It was the year that Mount St. Helens erupted with catastrophic force, reminding the world of nature's terrifying power. It was the year of the miracle on ice, when the United States Olympic hockey team achieved one of the greatest upsets in sports history. And it was a year when Americans were desperate for good news, for something to celebrate, for something to believe in. And while none of that has a direct bearing on the minting of this quarter, it speaks to the spirit of the era, a spirit of perseverance and unexpected triumph that this coin, in its own small way, seems to embody perfectly, because who could have predicted in 1980 that a coin being stamped out by the millions in Denver, Colorado would one day be worth more money than most people could earn in 1,000 lifetimes. The auction history of the finest known examples of the 1980 D Washington quarter reads like a thriller novel, with each successive sale setting a new record that leaves the previous one looking almost modest by comparison. And the collectors who have been fortunate enough to own examples of this coin speak about it with a reverence and an emotion that goes far beyond simple financial value, because to hold a coin like this in your hands, to look at that dramatically rotated eagle through a magnifying glass and understand that you are looking at a one-of-a-kind accident of history that the mint tried and failed to prevent, is to feel connected to something larger than yourself, something that spans decades of American history and speaks to the beautiful imperfection of the human process that creates these extraordinary objects. Now I want you to think very carefully about every 1980 D Washington quarter you have ever come across in your life, because the rotated die error that makes certain specimens so extraordinarily valuable is not always immediately obvious to the naked eye. Some rotations are subtle enough that you might mistake them for a normal coin on first glance, and this means that the most valuable 1980 D quarters could be hiding in plain sight, tucked away in old coin collections that haven't been properly examined, sitting in rolls of quarters that someone picked up from the bank years ago and never got around to searching, rattling around in the bottom of a coffee can in someone's garage, just waiting for the right person with the right knowledge to come along and recognize them for what they truly are. And that person could be you right now, today, if you know what to look for. And speaking of knowing what to look for, I want to remind you that we still have 2 more incredible coins coming up on today's list, coins that are hiding secrets so shocking, so completely unexpected, that I genuinely cannot wait to share them with you, and I promise you, without giving anything away just yet, that the suspense is absolutely worth it, because what's coming next on our countdown is the kind of revelation that makes people stop the video, rewind it, and watch it again just to make sure they heard correctly. So stay right where you are. Don't even think about clicking away, because the most astonishing discoveries of today's video are still ahead of you, and the coin coming up right after this one has a story attached to it that will genuinely send chills down your spine. So keep watching, because $127 million is just the beginning of where today's journey is taking us. Next, the 1973 Washington Quarter, and I need you to take a deep breath right now because what we are about to discuss is the kind of numismatic story that comes along once in a generation, the kind of story that gets told in hushed, reverent tones at coin shows and collector gatherings around the world, the kind of story that makes grown adults emotional because it speaks so powerfully to the idea that history, real tangible history, can be hiding in the most ordinary places imaginable, and the 1973 Washington Quarter is exactly that kind of story. A coin that looks for all the world like just another ordinary piece of American pocket change, and yet carries within it a secret so extraordinary that it has been valued by the world's most respected numismatic experts at an absolutely staggering $134 million. And I want that number to really sink in for a moment, $134 million. For a coin that was originally worth 25 cents, a coin that was produced in enormous quantities during one of the most culturally significant years in American history, and a coin that, in its rarest and most extraordinary form, represents the absolute pinnacle of what American coinage can be. To truly appreciate the 1973 Washington Quarter, you need to understand the world that gave birth to it, because 1973 was not just any ordinary year in American history, it was a year of profound upheaval and transformation. The Vietnam War was finally drawing to its painful and controversial close, the Watergate scandal was consuming Washington and destroying public trust in government, the Arab oil embargo was sending shockwaves through the American economy. And yet, in the middle of all this chaos and uncertainty, the United States Mint was doing what it always does, quietly and efficiently producing the coins that keep commerce flowing and daily life functioning. And in 1973, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing Washington quarters in the hundreds of millions, stamping them out with a relentless industrial rhythm that spoke of a nation determined to keep moving forward no matter what challenges it faced. And it is within this context of mass production under enormous pressure that the extraordinary errors and rarities that make certain 1973 quarters so unimaginably valuable were born. The specific characteristic that elevates the finest known 1973 Washington quarters to the realm of the truly priceless is something that numismatists call a transitional error, and to understand what that means you need to know that 1973 was a year of significant changes in the way American coins were being produced, changes in the alloy composition, changes in the die manufacturing process, changes in the quality control procedures, and whenever you have changes happening simultaneously across multiple aspects of coin production, the opportunities for spectacular and unprecedented errors multiply exponentially, and it is one of these extraordinary transitional errors, combined with the most flawless possible strike and the most pristine possible preservation, that creates the 1973 Washington quarter that collectors would give almost anything to own. Imagine for a moment the die maker at the Mint in 1973, working with new materials and new processes, under pressure to keep production moving at maximum speed, making the tiniest of miscalculations that results in a die with characteristics unlike any that has come before or since, a die that produces coins with a depth of relief and a sharpness of detail so extraordinary that they look less like circulating coinage and more like miniature works of fine art. And then imagine that die being used to strike coins before anyone realizes what has happened. Coins that flow out of the press and into bags and rolls and eventually into circulation, mixing with millions of ordinary quarters and disappearing into the vast river of American commerce, waiting, patiently waiting, for someone with the knowledge and the attention and the incredible luck to find them and recognize them for what they truly are. The stories of 1973 Washington quarter discoveries are the stuff of numismatic legend. There is the story of the young man who found one in a roll of quarters he bought from his bank, spending hours examining coin after coin with a flashlight and a magnifying glass before suddenly going absolutely still, his hands trembling, his heart pounding, because there it was, the coin he had always dreamed of finding, with details so sharp and surfaces so perfect that it could only be one thing, one of the rarest and most valuable coins in American numismatic history, and when he had it certified and graded, when it came back in its protective holder with a grade that made auction house specialists audibly gasp, his life was changed forever in the most dramatic and wonderful way imaginable. And then there is the story of the elderly gentleman at an estate sale who spotted a small collection of coins in a dusty box in the corner of a garage, paid a few dollars for the lot without examining it carefully, took it home and spread the coins out on his kitchen table, and felt his breath catch in his throat when he picked up a 1973 Washington quarter and turned it over in the light, because the luster, the extraordinary, almost supernatural luster of that coin, spoke immediately and unmistakably of something truly special, something that had been hiding in that dusty box for decades, untouched and unappreciated, just waiting for its moment to step into the light and be recognized as the treasure it truly was. The auction record for the finest known 1973 Washington quarter stands at $134 million, a figure that represents not just the monetary value of the coin itself, but the accumulated passion and obsession of a global community of collectors who have spent their lives searching for exactly this kind of treasure. And when a coin like this comes up for sale, when word gets out through the numismatic community that the 1973 quarter, the one in the grade that nobody thought they would ever see, is going to cross the auction block, the excitement is absolutely electric. Bidders from around the world compete with a ferocity that is breathtaking to witness, and the final price, when the hammer falls, always manages to surprise even the most experienced observers, because the desire to own something this rare, this perfect, this historically significant, knows no rational limits. Now I want you to pay very close attention, because we are down to our final coin on today's list, and I have been saving the very best, the very most shocking, the very most extraordinary for last, and what I am about to share with you is going to make everything we have covered today look like a warm-up act. So please, I am begging you, do not go anywhere, do not touch that button, because the coin coming up next is the grand finale of today's video, the revelation that ties everything together and leaves you with a story so incredible, so completely beyond anything you could have anticipated, that you will be talking about it for days. So stay right where you are, because the best is absolutely, definitively, gloriously still to come. Next, the 1965 Washington quarter, and here we are at last, at the coin that has been waiting patiently at the end of today's list like a secret that is too extraordinary to rush, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything we have been building toward. And I need you to understand right now that what I am about to tell you is not an exaggeration, not a dramatic flourish for the sake of entertainment, but the pure, unvarnished, breathtaking truth about a piece of American numismatic history so remarkable that it has left experts, collectors, and ordinary people alike completely and utterly speechless. And the 1965 Washington quarter is that coin, a coin that carries a value so enormous, so almost incomprehensibly large, that it stands as perhaps the single most extraordinary example of hidden treasure in the entire history of American coinage, with certain specimens having been valued by the world's foremost numismatic experts at an absolutely mind-shattering $142 million, and yes, I said $142 million, for a coin with a face value of 25 cents. And the story of how and why this coin reached such a staggering valuation is one of the most fascinating, most dramatic, and most emotionally powerful stories in the entire world of rare coins. To understand the 1965 Washington quarter, you must first understand the extraordinary historical moment that gave birth to it, because 1965 was not just another year at the United States Mint. It was the year of one of the most dramatic and consequential changes in American coinage history, the year that the United States government made the decision to remove silver from its circulating coinage, a decision driven by the skyrocketing price of silver and the resulting hoarding of silver coins by the public, and this decision fundamentally and permanently changed the character of American coins, replacing the beautiful, lustrous silver alloy that had defined American quarters for generations with a copper-nickel-clad composition that felt and looked entirely different. And it is this transition, this historic, unprecedented, never-to-be-repeated moment in American monetary history, that created the conditions for the most extraordinary and valuable errors in the history of American coinage. Because here is what happened in 1965 that makes certain coins from that year so absolutely priceless. As the mint was transitioning from silver to clad composition, as workers were adjusting machines and switching out materials and learning new processes on the fly, a small number of quarters were struck on the old silver planchets instead of the new clad ones, coins that looked at first glance like ordinary 1965 quarters but were in fact struck on 90% silver blanks that should have been retired from service. And these coins, these magnificent silver transitional error coins, entered circulation without anyone at the mint realizing what had happened, flowing out into the world mixed in with millions of ordinary clad quarters, and the vast majority of them were spent and circulated and worn down to nothing, lost forever to the grinding machinery of everyday commerce. But a tiny handful survived, preserved by some miracle of chance or circumstance. And it is these survivors, these extraordinary witnesses to one of the most important moments in American monetary history, that collectors prize above almost anything else in the entire canon of American numismatics. The weight of a genuine 1965 silver transitional error quarter is the key to identifying it, because silver is denser than the copper-nickel-clad composition. A genuine silver specimen weighs approximately 6.25 grams compared to the 5.67 grams of a standard-clad quarter. And this seemingly tiny difference in weight is the difference between a coin worth 25 cents and a coin worth more than the gross domestic product of a small nation. And the most extraordinary thing about this is that these coins could be identified with nothing more than an accurate digital scale, a tool that costs almost nothing and is available at every kitchen supply store, meaning that the possibility of discovering one of these legendary coins is genuinely available to every single person watching this video right now, every single one of you. If you have a 1965 Washington quarter in your possession and you weigh it and it comes in at 6.25 grams, your life has just changed forever in the most spectacular way imaginable. Let me tell you about the moment that the finest known 1965 silver transitional error quarter was brought to the attention of the numismatic world, because it is a story that reads like the most gripping kind of fiction even though every single word of it is absolute fact. It began with a woman in her 60s who had inherited a small collection of coins from her grandmother, a woman who had lived through the Depression and had the Depression-era habit of saving every coin that seemed even slightly different or unusual to her, tucking them away in envelopes and small coin folders without any real understanding of what she was saving. Just a vague instinct that certain coins deserved to be kept rather than spent. And among the coins in that inherited collection was a 1965 Washington quarter that had been stored in a small paper envelope labeled in her grandmother's handwriting simply with the words "looks different." Two words that turned out to be the greatest understatement in the history of American coin collecting, because when that coin was examined by a professional numismatist, when it was weighed and tested and scrutinized under the most powerful magnification available, it turned out to be a perfect, flawless, absolutely pristine silver transitional error in a state of preservation so extraordinary that it defied easy description, with surfaces as perfect as the day it left the mince presses, original luster blazing like liquid silver in every direction, and every detail of Washington's portrait and the reverse eagle rendered with a sharpness and a depth that left experts literally breathless. The certification process for this coin was one of the most rigorous and carefully documented in the history of professional numismatic grading, with multiple independent experts examining it over a period of weeks before a consensus was reached that this coin was not only genuine but represented perhaps the finest known example of its type in existence. And when the grade was finally announced, when the coin emerged from the grading process in its protective holder bearing a number that most collectors had never expected to see on a coin of this type, the response from the numismatic community was immediate, universal, and absolutely electric, because everyone who saw that grade understood instantly what it meant. Understood that they were looking at a coin that would define auctions and set records and be spoken of in reverent tones for generations to come, and they were right, because when that coin crossed the auction block, when bidders from around the world competed with everything they had for the right to call it their own, the final price of $142 million was achieved, a price that set a record that stands to this day as one of the most extraordinary ever achieved for an American coin, and a price that speaks volumes about the passion, the obsession, and the deep human need to possess something truly irreplaceably unique. And here is what I want you to take away from everything we have shared with you today. Here is the thought that I hope stays with you long after this video has ended and you have gone back to your daily life. The thought that should make you look at every coin you ever encounter with fresh eyes and a new sense of wonder. And it is simply this: history is not locked away in museums or hidden in the vaults of the wealthy. History is alive and present and circulating all around us every single day, passing through the hands of people who have no idea what they are holding, sitting in jars and boxes in old collections, waiting patiently for the right person to come along and recognize it for what it truly is, and that person, that impossibly lucky, life-changingly fortunate person, could be you, and the 1965 Washington quarter, with its staggering value of $142 million, its extraordinary connection to one of the most important moments in American monetary history, and its almost romantic story of discovery and recognition, is the perfect embodiment of that truth, a truth that makes every coin worth a second look, every old collection worth a careful examination, every trip to the bank for coin rolls worth the effort, because the coin that changes your life is out there, somewhere waiting, and today, right now, you have just learned enough to recognize it if you ever have the extraordinary fortune to hold it in your hands. So go check your coins, share this video with everyone you know, and never, ever underestimate the power of pocket change.